G'day everyone, thought I'd pop in for a quick live. I haven't had a chat with you guys for a couple of weeks now live. I've had a really bad cold, I've had a man cold. So I'm still sounding a bit nasally, I'm not sure how I'll go. I've got tissues on hand, just in case if I start sneezing.
G'day everyone.
Oops. So say hi if you are popping in onto the chat. I'm going to give it a few minutes before we start. This is really only a Q&A and I might just go over briefly the video I just posted with you guys just to see what you all think. To see what actually everyone thinks about it. Let me just go over here. G'day Michael. Good to see you in here. Nice and late for you. I think, what time is it? Nearly 1 in the morning over there. What time are we here? We're 2:56 here. 82300 saying hi. Peter's saying good afternoon as well. Good to see you, Peter. Thought I'd pop in and have a chat now that I'm nearly off my deathbed. I've given Kerry the cold, so she's thanking me. She only has the female version, though, of this cold. She doesn't have the man cold that I had, that clearly, you know, I was almost at the end of my life. But I am making a recovery. Vic's here as well. Flyball Ariel's here. Hello from Los Angeles. How are you, Langston? Good to see you here too. Chris, hello David, a big Corona day in Los Angeles. I bet it is. Not for me though. What, it's only 15 degrees Celsius here today. Quite a cold one. Almost 10 p.m. in California. Michael said, hey David, hope you feel better, buddy. Not too late. It's 10. Oh, is it only 10 there? Oh, that's right. You're LA, aren't you? Not New York. I keep forgetting. I keep thinking you're from New York for some reason. It was New York that was nearly 1, I think. Hard to get used to all these timeline differences. At least it might be a bit easier for the UK and stuff and Europe. I think it's about 6 in the morning. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock in the morning in London. So I'd be interested to see how many we've got there now. David is saying here that should he buy the DJI Ronin S for the A7 III? It depends on what weight you want, David. If you want to carry the big lenses like the 24-70 or the 70-200, definitely. It's certainly not, look, I wouldn't mind to have a try of it, but to be honest, I really like the weight of the Moza Aircross because I like to be able to carry a couple of different cameras at the time, and I really like the lightweight. So for me, something like the Moza Aircross or the Crane is a bit nicer because they're not so heavy. But if you don't mind lugging around the weight and you're just shooting video, the DJI Ronin S would be an amazing gimbal, and I'd love to have a try of it just to do a review of it. I might get one day just to do that, so that'd be fun as well. But everything I've heard about that DJI Ronin S seems to be an amazing gimbal, but it is big and heavy. You've got to be aware of that. Flyball says, a lot of LA people here. Alan says, hi from North Ireland. G'day, Alan. Rui says, hello from Alabama, 12 p.m. here. JB Media says, good morning. Maddie's also saying, g'day, bit colder here in Canberra. It was freezing this morning, I saw, wasn't it? About -6 or something Celsius. Maddie said, g'day. Oh, that's what I just said. Peter said, I wonder why people don't use focus peaking in video on Sony's 16 degrees Celsius in Eden. Well, I use focus peaking, mostly when I'm shooting macro though, Peter. Apart from that, I don't really use it. But I'm using autofocus now, so I'm not really doing manual focus much anymore at all. Because the video focus is so good now, on the Sony cameras like the A7 III and the A9, particularly both of those cameras, I just don't use autofocus that much. I mean manual focus that much. Michael said, yeah, it's 1 a.m. in New York, yep. Flyball said, my day job spans from East Coast offices to the Ukraine. I feel your pain. Vic said, London, Ontario, only 17 and it's summer. Whoa, that is cold. Wow. I shouldn't complain. It's the middle of winter here and it's 15 degrees Celsius, so that's funny, Vic. David said, thank you, David. You're great. No worries, David, at all. Now, while we're starting, let me just bring up this because I want you guys, don't forget to join our photography group. Check out this image that Joe just put on, and I put it at the header this week. The competition this week was to show me the place you live, your best photo, and check out this image. How beautiful is this image? From Joe. Now that's cold. I complain about 15 degrees Celsius. That is really cold. It's a beautiful image though, isn't it? That's the ocean there, obviously. and these are waves. I think frozen there as well, or it's a lake. But how beautiful is that? This week's task is actually to show your best image lit by flash or strobe. We've already got a couple of people have put their images in already. I just posted that a couple of minutes ago, and I pick one per week to put up onto the site. So please join us there, because it's just a fantastic group. We've got some amazing stuff being posted in there. I also put on when I'm going to come on live. But yeah, please join it, because I'd love to see you in there. This site's for you guys to promote your work, to promote your website, your Instagram feeds, your YouTube channels. So please join us. Let me just get back to questions. Flyball said, I've used the Rowan S at 2 car shows so far, didn't find it too bad. Both times I had the 24-105 mounted with my A7 II, didn't die in the LA sun. Well, that's really good. Look, the Rowan S would be amazing, but for me, when I'm shooting holding 2 images in one go, it's not going to work for me. Let me just bring up, and I'll show you why, because when I'm shooting, I'm still going to go through some stuff with you guys. Where did I put that? I had some images, I'll have to find them. I had some images showing me doing fusion, and I'm holding both cameras at the one time. Let me just see if I can find it in this other folder just quickly. If I can, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Yeah, there we go. I can show you here. So let me bring this up and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go through this with you all eventually about how I do fusion, because I do want to discuss this with you about how I capture a wedding and use fusion at the same time. What you can see here is that I'm holding 2 cameras here. I've got the, it'll probably be the A7 III in my right hand, and then I've got the A9 or the A7 R2 on the gimbal there. So I'm holding 2 cameras up at one time here doing fusion. People laugh when they see me doing it, but really I don't know anyone else out there that's offering this type of thing. But to be able to do that, I need a gimbal that's light enough that I can hold my, in my left hand, the camera on a gimbal, and my right hand I'm holding in the other one with back button focus and just firing away, probably there with the 35mm on it probably. And you can see how I'm able to do that because that gimbal's light. If I was holding something like the Rowan S, I wouldn't be able to do that. If I was shooting video just on its own, then I probably would have something like the Rowan S, because it wouldn't bother me having the weight and I could hold it with 2 hands. But because I'm walking around basically holding 2 hands like this, you can see there that, it just wouldn't work. I'll see if I can find another one and show you. You can see it a little bit closer here. What's going on. So I've got both cameras here. I think it is the 24, the 35 1.4 there. You can see there I'm using the, it's actually got the A6500 on there with the 24 1.8 on there. But that's how that gives me that ability. So it's great to be able to do that and work that way and run 2 cameras at the same time. So that's why I can't use something that's so heavy like the Rowan S. So let me come back to here and drag this back. But like I said, if you were doing full-on videography, or you were a videographer, or even if you were like me and you went out and you wanted to just concentrate on doing video and stills but separately, the Rowan S would be a fantastic gimbal. I think if I had the money, I'd probably get the Rowan S. I'd prefer to buy that than say, the Crane gimbals. It just seems to be so beautifully made, and all the reviews that I've seen about the Rowan S, everyone raves about that aspect of it. The issue for me would be the weight, and that's the problem. So for me at this stage, it's just not going to work. But it may be something that I can add in to sort of do my behind the scenes stuff, and where someone else is filming it, that might be a thing that I can actually do. Flyball said, I basically do one pass for photos around the show and another for the video. Okay, yeah, that's why you could do it. Wish I could do both at the same time, but that will require cloning myself. Not unless you do it like I do it, though, Flyball. I've just showed you exactly how I do it. Berger said, David, the lower 15mm f2 or the Sigma 20mm 1.4. Well, I'd probably get the 15. That's a beautiful lens, but that's the way I would work. I would really love the 12mm, to be honest. But they are gorgeous lens, those ones. There's nothing wrong with the Sigma 20, though, but that's probably what I'd be getting is that 15. Because it's so wide, having that really shallow depth of field doesn't really bother me that much. Peter said, thanks for posting the group. I really couldn't find it. If you need it... Oh, the About section. Yeah, it is. It's in the About section. Yeah, I put it in there for you, Peter. Trevor Pinnicky said, Tom Antos just did a comparison video between the Crane 2 Moser Air and the Rowan S. He rates it quite low for the number of reasons, including weight and weird glitches. Oh, that's interesting. The weight is an issue. The thing is, and this is what you've got to watch, guys, that when you're dealing with stuff, you can get hooked in by new technology, and weight can be a massive thing. Once all the novelty wears off of all of these features and whatever you're going to do, if you've physically got to hold something that's really heavy, you're going to get tired very, very quickly. Whereas I can just hold the, I can hold the Moser Aircross easily for ages, and it doesn't get heavy. Like, it's just brilliant. I mean, that's the Crane M. I bought the Crane M to have with my the RX100, but the Moser Aircross is brilliant if you're dealing with anything up to, say, the A7 III, A9, A7R, but it would struggle if you wanted to put a 2470 on there. It probably would work, but it would be starting to get borderline, and then you might need to go to the Moser Air for a little bit more weight. But I really don't want to be lugging around things that are really that heavy. I want to work as light as possible, and say having an A7 III and put the 10 to 18 on there, which works fantastic in Super 35 mode. It works with the 16 to 35 quite well, so I can do that if I need a wide angle lens. It'll work with a 35 1.4. And it's a really nice light gimbal. I adore that Moser Aircross. It's just brilliant. Love the way the whole thing works, the way it auto calibrates. And I just don't want to be lugging around those heavy gimbals. That's why I never wanted to get the new Cranes. They're too heavy. I really want to travel nice and light for me, and that it just makes it far more enjoyable, and if you're traveling, it's easier to lug around. It's not so heavy. I just like the way they work. What else have we got? So it's interesting. I didn't realise Tonantis had done that. I'll have to have a look at that and see what they're saying about it. Trevor said the A6500 seems to be massively popular for gimbal work. Well, it is. It's nice and light. The focus is really good. Even my A6300 works fantastic on a gimbal. It's just you haven't got the touchscreen at the back, but the focus is basically the same. So the A6300 also works brilliantly on a gimbal and really light. That's what I love about it. So for that type of thing, it's great. And I would recommend that's the way to go, particularly if you're doing fusion where you're dealing with it working together like that. The lighter that works, the better it is. I could get by with using the A7 III and a light lens on there, like the 35 2.8. That would also work really well, because that's also a really nice small combo. I mean, when you're looking at that, that's a lovely small combo. So that would work great on a gimbal as well. 2.8 is still fine. You're still going to get that lovely depth of field. So I could easily use that as well if I wanted to, and that would work really well on something like the Moser Aircross. That's well under what it will be able to carry, and plus it's quite light. The only real reason why I don't use those on there is because I've got the A6500, and I might as well be using that on a gimbal, and then it leaves the other cameras free for doing photography. So, because usually I'm walking around and I'll have, say an 85 on the A9 or whatever, and then on the A7 III I'll have the 35 f1.4. So then I can have them on a belt and just use those, and have, say, my gimbal has the A6500 on there, or the A6300. I can use that as well. Mike said, hello, g'day, how are you, Mike? Barry's just saying hi as well. Trevor said the Rowan S is one of those gimbals that after 10 minutes or so really gets uncomfortable and heavy. And see, this is the problem. This is what I'm saying. You need to think about that yes, it might be brilliant, but if it's so uncomfortable that you can't lug it around, the novelty is going to wear off really quickly. And that's something that you've got to consider with weight on these things, that the lighter they are, the better. But you don't want to be working the motors too hard. That's why you've got to stay within the realms of what that motor will do. Like, I wouldn't want to be putting a 2470 G Master with an A7 III on my Moser Aircross, because I think it would start to struggle. I haven't done it, but I think it would. It's borderline on you know, what it's sort of being able to work with. So I think if that's the case, you're better off to go up one. But I really don't want to be using those big lenses. To be honest, I'd be getting something like the Tamron 28-75 and putting that on the gimbal rather than the G Master, because that thing is so light and it's basically just as good. And you're dealing with something that's probably half the weight of what a G Master would be. It's probably even more than that. It's so light. The focal range is great. The focus is great. And then you could easily do that with the Moser Aircross, because I've done that, and I did that with the shot of Kiara at the Werribee Mansion that I did. That worked brilliantly, and that was great. And I think I'd go that way if I wanted to work with a, say, 2470. I'll be using something like the Tamron 28-70. The focus issues with that now seem to have disappeared. They seem to be fine now after that update. So that's another thing that you know, people were holding back because of that. Obviously, though, it's still pretty hard to get, I think. I probably will get that lens down the track, because I might use that for weddings, for fusion videos in weddings. I think it would be a great lens for that, particularly how close you can focus to do things like ring shots and flower shots and things like that, because it's almost macro ability with that lens. Fantastic on a gimbal. So I think I'll go that way rather than buying a Rowan S. Like I said, if you're going to go the Rowan S line or the crane, the heavy cranes and things, or even the Moser Air, you really need to be just shooting video as a profession in itself, because you really do need to have that reason for using that weight and to be lugging around that weight. I think for someone like me who's doing fusion, occasional video, things like that, I don't want to be lugging around something like the Rowan S. Yeah. Doesn't mean I won't get it. I may get that one day to have for a person to do behind the scenes with me, but it's not something that I want to be lugging around to do what I just showed you before, which was, you know, that fusion type work. Chris said, do you have a battery grip for your cameras? What do you think about the second-party mic grip? I haven't got that, but I do have battery grips, yes. I don't use them, though. I've got battery grips for my A7R2, and I've also got battery grips for the A9 and the A7 III. But the batteries now are so good on the A7 III and the A7 R3 and the A9 that I just don't need to use them. If you've got really big hands and you're using heavy lenses, you might find that you need that balance. But again, it comes down to weight for me. And if I'm going to be doing fusion and carrying 2 cameras, any extra weight becomes a burden. So I'm really not interested in using that anymore. I like to be working minimalistic like this. You know, I really do like lugging a camera around. This is a 55, obviously. But I really do love coming around like this and not having this massive battery grip that's underneath that defeats the purpose really of why I wanted to go to mirrorless in the first place, which was to downsize in size, you know, and weight, to take the weight off my back. Where I used to always have, after doing a wedding, for instance, a really sore back. And it used to take me a day to get over that. Now I never get sore backs anymore because these cameras are so much lighter. That's another reason why I love shooting prime so much, because they're so light. So that's the reason why I don't recommend personally using a battery grip. If you really do like that big feel of a digital SLR, then of course you might find that that's worthwhile. But I've only ever used the Sony battery grips. I don't buy third-party battery grips, but I've heard that Mickey is quite good. So, but I don't use them. I have got them though. I should sell it. Hope you can understand me. I'm still nasally from this cold. Flyball said, I used to hold a boom mic, so maybe I'm already used to it. And you may be, and that's the thing. If you're young, you're used to carrying around the weight, well, then it might not bother you. But for me, I just don't want to do that anymore. I just want to be minimalistic in the gear that I lug around. Flyball said, what sort of glasses are you using on the non-gimbal while doing a hybrid shoot? Well, on that, it would be, I really only use, well, I can tell you, I use 3 lenses. I use the 24 1.8. That gives me a 35mm focal. I adore that lens, and I use that all the time. And that's what's actually on the A6500 now, the 24 1.8 E mount lens, APS-C lens. So I'm using that. I also use the 10 to 18 because I love that if I'm going to do something that's really wide. And I even use that occasionally on my full frame cameras. If I need something from 12 to 16, it works great on full frame. And I also use the 18 to 105. I use that as well. That's a great one on the gimbal too. So they're the 3 main ones that I use on the A6500. BC Robo said, hi David, new follower, welcome. Thanks for following. Julian said, hi from the Bronx, New York. The Revolver Oastler shoots again. Trevor Pick said, am I the only one who's starting to think that the level of quiet from Sony around the A7 III is really odd? No, I don't think so, Trevor. It's going to happen. I think, I definitely said to you before that I don't think anything is going to be announced until Photokina. I think Sony are definitely holding off on that aspect of it. They will announce something, but they may also be waiting to see what Nikon do and what Canon do. You don't know what they're going to do here. They may want to wait for that. I always said to you all along, if you've been listening to me, that I didn't think there'd be a release until late this year or early next year, and I think that's probably still the case. There's still rumours that Nikon are going to announce their mirrorless camera in the next few days, actually. So we're all waiting to sort of see what they announce. Hopefully it'll be something really good. I just posted a video about the Canon rumour site, which was up here, and I thought I'd just bring this up so you can have... let me just hide something here. Someone's just being an absolute idiot, so I'm just going to hide them. So this came up, and I put a video up there from about this a minute ago, and it's interesting because I wondered what you guys thought about this, because this camera deal, and I noticed there was one on B&H too talking about, I think they're adding a free grip in there, and it was about $400 cheaper, but this is what they're now offering here. They're offering the 5D Mark IV. They're also offering, in part of that package, the 24-105. It's got a Canon printer. It's got paper, which obviously is nothing. But they have thrown in the Profoto A1. Now, that's over $1,000 in itself. And also the Canon battery grip. Now, that's recommended retail price was $6,000. This is at Adorama. But they're selling this for $4,348. So it's dropping basically $2,000 off the price of that gear. So how interesting is that? And I put a video up a minute ago saying, is it time to sell your digital SLRs? And I'm waiting with sort of bated breath to see what trolls hop into here to say I'm being ridiculous and stuff. I wanted this to be a discussion about, do you think that now is the time to offload your stuff? Now, remember, I did do this 2 years ago because I was worried at the time that my Nikon gear was going to basically almost become worthless if Nikon dropped a mirrorless camera. Now, I said in that video that I was surprised how long it's taken to release a mirrorless camera from Nikon and Canon. But I'm just wondering too whether, if Nikon, say, and Canon do release a really good mirrorless camera, and I'm talking they pull the rabbit out of the hat, they produce something amazing. Now, they may do this, and I hope they really do, and I'm really excited about what's going to happen. But if they did do something like that, what do you think is going to happen to your old Nikon and Canon gear? Is the price of that gear going to drop through the floor? And this is the interesting thing, and this is why I wanted to open up a discussion about that on that previous video that I just posted. It may not happen, but I just like discussions with people talking about technology, and I thought, wow, it's interesting how they're starting to offer all these deals. And people have been saying on that yes, there's an awful lot of deals going around now for people trying to sell their Canon stuff and things like that. Are they trying to offload this gear, that offering prices like that, to say, well, we're trying to get rid of this stock before they do this release? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But, You know, and I wanted Canon users to actually chime in to that discussion. So I hope they do, and I hope they see it from the aspect of not trying to bag what Canon are doing or bag digital SLRs. I just wanted basically an adult discussion about, you know, what they think is going to be the future. And if they did pull this rabbit out of the hat and produce an amazing mirrorless camera that work with all the existing lenses, the adapters, you never know, might work amazingly well. What's going to happen? And it's just an interesting thing. So have a look at that video anyway that I've posted and leave a comment on there. But we're into interesting times, that's for sure. What else have we got? So I think with the Trevor, I think with the A7S III, it's still going to happen, but not yet. And I think that's always been on the agenda. Excuse me. Remember, Sony still can't catch up with the A7 III production, so I don't think they're in any hurry to release the A7S III. Remember too that the A7S III, the A7 III, and the A9 video particularly are outstanding. Even the A7R III video is great. So there's no real hurry for them to release an A7S III at this stage. So, you know, just bide your time, it's going to happen. Flyball said maybe they got the hint about the hyper-release schedule. Thought that's a bit weird. Flyball said, got me really thinking about the smaller gimbal now. Thanks for the information. No worries at all. Just let me have a drink. Like I said, I've just still recovering from my man cold. And you know how bad those man colds are. Flyball said, really got me thinking about a smaller gimbal now. Thanks for the information. No worries, Flyball. Just give it from the perspective of me, you know, and the way that I work. It's just so much of a pleasure to work with such a light gimbal. I originally started with Kane TV gimbals, and they were quite heavy. And it's changed the way I do my whole videos now that I can shoot so light. It's just beautiful. Gil said, hi from Israel. Hi, Gil. JD Strobus here as well. Brett's here. G'day, Brett. Exciting times in the gear arsenal. It certainly is, JD. And like I said, it's good for all of us. If prices drop, and I had a discussion just with someone, made a comment in the video that I just posted about, well, explain to me why the A7R III has dropped all of this money in the last 12 months. And I said, that's something that you have to be aware of if you've bought into Sony, that the Sony bodies have been changed quite regular. Now, if you're not happy with that, I wouldn't recommend buying into Sony. If you're going to worry about depreciation of Sony bodies, you really shouldn't be buying into Sony, because they have been doing that quite regular, and then it does affect the price of the bodies. The area that won't change with Sony is the G-Master or lenses. If you've got lenses from Sony, they really hold their value. So that's one of the interesting things. Remember, bodies are replaceable, and basically, some of you aren't going to like me saying this, but they're basically like a commodity that you will just trade in or throw away. And that's because it is something that will be replaced probably quite often. Lenses could last you a lifetime if you look after them. So that's the big difference. So if you're worried about the price of the bodies, that's going to be an issue. Now Canon and Nikon particularly have held their prices a lot better, and that's because they've basically waited 3 years before they've updated their cameras. So that's something that has been different with Canon and also Nikon. But that might change when they come into the mirrorless market, because if they're going to compete, they're going to have to start, say, doing the same thing that Sony do. You know, if they release a mirrorless camera and then you've got to wait 3 years before they release another one, imagine how fast Sony will have gotten ahead in that 3 years. So that's something that you do have to consider. So you certainly have to get out of that mentality of worrying about, wow, I've bought a Sony camera and then, 12 months later you've lost that money. And I can tell you that's happened to me every time I've bought Sony cameras. I mean, I bought the A9. I bought this for $7,000. Yep, $7,000 Australian. I think now you can buy it for around $5,000. So that's $2,000 that's dropped down. Now, do I hate Sony for that? No, I don't. It's just the way it works. Now, I've had probably, what is it now, a year and a half out of that camera, and I don't regret it one little bit. if I did, I wouldn't have bought it. So that's something you've got to consider. How much you'll use that camera. If you're worried about depreciation, well, perhaps you just need to buy a good camera and then not resell. Then it doesn't become an issue. But depreciation is going to be a big issue if you're getting into the latest cameras, because they are a commodity and you've got to get over that fact of it. Buy decent lenses and then that won't happen with lenses particularly. But bodies you're going to replace. You don't have to do it, remember. No one's forcing you to replace it. If you've paid, I can't remember who it was, but if you've paid, say, $4,000 for that camera and then it's now lost $1,000, that camera is still as good as the day you've got it. So you've got to think that way about it. What else have we got? Gil said, love your channel. Thank you so much, Gil. Really appreciate you watching. Love too, guys. We've only got 9 thumbs up and we've got 64 watching. Please give me a thumbs up. It just lets people come in. I'd really appreciate it if you could do that for me. I'm just laughing at Gord because Gord said, do you know what time it is here in the morning? Well, you should be in bed, Gord, or you shouldn't be up at this time of the day. Mr. Dex said, good day from Singapore. Appreciate your advice. Great tips from your videos. Good job. Thanks, mate. Thanks for watching. David said, good to see you, Michael Pierce. JD Strobid, yes, I did. Brett said, sorry, I'll stick with Sony. Tim said, I've noticed Canon and Nikon sales around a bit more, and it's probably in preparation for their mirrorless. And it has to be. I think that's probably got to be the case. But I also wonder too that Nikon still can't keep up with their D850 at the moment. It's still on back order now, so I'm wondering if it's got a similar sensor, how they're going to keep up with that as well. It's going to be interesting. I'm wondering too whether that back order problem with Nikon is because of the mirrorless camera. It could be. Chris said prices have gone down on Canon gear on eBay in the last few days. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Michael said, David, thanks. He's just talking to someone else. Mr. Dexter said, I came from Minolta and I have been with Sony since. Excuse me. You have to excuse my coughing and spluttering. Trevor said, I sold all my Nikon gears 3 years ago, D800 and the Holy Trinity, and haven't seen anything since that convinced me digital SLRs haven't been surpassed by the tech in mirrorless. Trevor said digital SLRs can no longer match the trajectory and innovation of mirrorless. Yeah, and it is going to be interesting to see when Nikon and Canon finally release their mirrorless cameras, which way they're going to go. You know, are they going to push the mirrorless more, or are they going to try and do it in balance? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. JD Strober said it's going to depreciate pretty quickly, I think, except for the glass. I suspect the glass will hold value for many years ahead until they build their retrospective mirrorless native lens line. And the glass always has held their value. And that's the thing. You can almost sell your lenses for the prices you paid for them. That's the beauty of buying good glass. And people whinge about paying for good glass, but it holds its value. That's the thing with that. And then, like I said, bodies you replace, but the glass will last you for possibly your lifetime. Michael said, should buy Sony A7 II as... where were we? Should buy A7 II as a backup camera in 218. No, I wouldn't, Michael, now. I wouldn't be buying the A7 II. I'd be saving up to get the A7 III. There's a massive difference between the A7 II and the A7 III, honestly. I would not buy that camera now at all. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. BC said, tell me about it. Just received my A7 III after 5 weeks back order. I know, I bet it's worth the wait. But yeah, it's been a long time. Daniel said, according to B&H, the way they will have a new shipment of the A7 III on the 24th. Okay. But there'll still be a lot of back orders. Just let me blow my nose. Excuse me. Oh, I hope that didn't come back through too loud for you guys. Oh, boy. I've got a snowshoot this weekend too, so hopefully I'm going to be all right. What else have we got? Flyball said, wow, it's still that far out of order. Yeah, it's very hard to get. Rod said, can you talk about audio mic jack problems? There isn't any. Rod, I haven't had any problems with my A7 III. Mention to me what you're talking about and then I can sort of say something. But I've had no problems with any of that stuff. So mention in the comments, and when I get to it, I'll come back to it. Serenity Photos said, people that complain about depreciation don't make money with their gear. And that's the thing, you've got to get over that if you're talking about depreciation with electronic gear. I'd prefer, and this is the interesting thing, I would prefer Sony to keep updating, and then I could keep sort of buying the newer gear than waiting 3 years and having to use that gear over 3 years and then be so outdated. But that's the way I prefer. You may not like that. And you're always hearing, like, you know, the angry talking about, oh, it's junk and all this sort of stuff and it's just throwaway. Well, that doesn't bother me at all because it works for me in the time I'm using it. And then I'm continuously getting new gear, and I love that aspect of it. Doesn't make me an any better photographer, but I just love new gear. Kevin said, hi David, finally got my A7 III. It will take some time to get used to the menu after shooting the Canon for so long. Once you're used to it though, Kevin, it really becomes second nature. And I've talked about this before, that if you're a Sony user and that's all you've ever shot and then you went to Canon, you would have the same problem trying to work out menus. You will get used to it and then it becomes second nature. But I love this thing so far. I have much more room in my bag. I know if you're traveling and stuff, the difference is amazing. Serenity said, I bought the D80D a year ago for $1,200 and made like $6 with it. Laugh out loud. Joey said, hey David, do you have any recommendations for ND filters for shooting weddings? Yes, the one I use is this one. It's the Polar Pro Master, I mean. Let me see if I can get it to focus. So that's the one that I recommend. It is in my links. If you go to my gear links, you'll find it in there. I adore it. No color cast, beautiful quality. They're not cheap. I mean, this is for the 55 and it's around $100, I think. But amazing quality, really amazing quality. And I'm not sponsored by them. Pay for it out of my own money. Serenity said, now my A7R III made me several $1,000s. I'm about to book a 2000 wedding tomorrow. I'll buy the A7 III as a backup. That's perfect. Trevor said, I always contemplate selling my A7R II. I've still got mine, Trevor. But when I shoot with it, the pics are still top notch, so I can't see a reason to sell. I focus mainly on glass these days. Yeah, and that can be a good thing. I've still got my A7R II. I might upgrade that when the next version comes out, though. I probably will get the A7S III when it's released. What else have we got? Mr. Dexter has said Sony Singapore is running a trade-in for old digital SLR body plus battery plus charger for the United States $956 offset for Sony A7 Mark III in 2470. Interesting. Michael said, the thing about buying things when they first come out is you'll always pay more to get it first. And you're exactly right, Michael. That is the dead truth. If you don't want to do that, wait 6 months or so and you'll find the prices will drop quite substantially usually. Yeah, and you've said that if you wait 6 months, you'll always save money. But in the 6 month, you'll make triple. And that's the thing, you'll be making money at the time. If you need it, you shouldn't be worrying about it. It's like buying an iPhone, isn't it? That the second you buy them, then you know 12 months later, a new iPhone's going to come out and you'll halve the value of what you paid for that. So anything with technology is the same. Gord said, I was on my way to bed but saw you on. Of course I will stick around. Can sleep later. As for gear, I shoot Nikon and plan to wait to see what happens. It may be worth it for the long run. And I'll be waiting too, Gord, definitely. If you were thinking about switching, I'd definitely be waiting first and see what Nikon and Canon have to offer. Flyball said, I wish I heard that 3 months ago when I bought the A7 III. Yeah, but it's still a good camera. I just wouldn't recommend you to buy it now if you had the choice. Jeffrey said lifetime for lenses. Depends on how old you are. Kevin said, I was thinking about holding out for the Canon mirrorless, but I think that they will be a lot more money than the Sony. You just don't know, Kevin. They may not be. It still might be worthwhile waiting, though, to see what happens. If you're not in any hurry, I'd wait. Flyball said, in all seriousness, I cannot seem to locate your Facebook group. Oh, let me have a look. I'll see if I can. I'm not sure if I can post it in the comments. I'll try. Let me see if I can post it here. Did it go in? There it is. I'll just put it in the comments. Fireworks said, thoughts on the 16 to 35 f4 on the A7R II. I love it. I use that all the time, Fireworks. That 16 to 35 is one of my favourite lenses. That's great lens for landscape. The A7R II is still beautiful for landscape. I still use that when I'm doing studio shoots, if there's high-end retouching involved. I haven't sold my A7R II because I love the Play Memories hacks that you can put on that for the time limit. So if I'm dealing with shooting in weddings and things like that and I want to do long receptions and stuff, I can use my A7R II because it can have the time limit disabled. That's a big thing for me, and that's the reason why I still love the A6500 and the A6300. So it's probably a reason why I won't sell the A7R II, because of those Play Memories hacks. And it's got the internal intervalometer, things like that, so you can do all your time-lapse things and things like that. Brett said, still a lot of back orders on the Sony Z batteries. Wow, interesting. Funny thing was, when I bought my A9, I bought 5 Z batteries. Because I thought that they were the same as the previous battery. Now I just laugh because I only use basically one for a whole wedding. So it cracks me up now to think that I bought all these batteries. But now that I'm doing video, fusion sort of video, it works well, and I've got the 2 cameras that share that now, so it's not so bad. And if I'm shooting video, I've got plenty of batteries to get through the whole day. But I did buy 5 batteries, which is interesting. JD Strober said, any news about the A7S III? I'm holding it back until Canon and Nikon release. Well, I'm not sure if they're holding it back. I always believed that they would announce something at Photokina, and I think that still might be the case. That's September. And then I think it probably will be announced. Remember, I said to you all along, they're holding out, I believe, to get that new EVF in that camera, which is double the resolution of our current EVFs. And that's not going to be mass produced until the end of the year. And I still think that's the case. I think Sony would have been silly to release the A7S without that new EVF. Don't forget what happened to Sony when they sold the A6300 and then the A6500 came out 6 months later. How many people were bagging Sony and carrying on? People would not be happy if they released the A7S III and then 6 months later they brought out a new camera with that better EVF. They're really better off to wait. And remember, being the video-centric camera that the A7S III is going to be, having that better EVF is an advantage, particularly if you're doing manual focus. So it's worthwhile waiting for it. Michael said, Serenity Photos, I totally agree with you. I'm a dream for these companies. I'm a consumer, beta, pay price, full post tester. Michael buys everything that's basically released. It's quite funny. And that's the thing, you either love the technology or you don't, you know, and if you can afford it, Michael, what's the problem with it? You know you're going to lose money, but if you can afford it, or if you're making money from it, it doesn't matter. Mike said, photography Facebook link below. What else? Rod said, some people on YouTube reporting audio input connector not working with an external mic. Audio levels suddenly drop. Hasn't happened to me, but reports are saying a potential recall might be needed. Oh, I'd be surprised, Rod. Remember, don't forget that when you, and this is what you've got to understand about the way that these so-called sites that record problems deal with. Now, if you're dealing with selling a camera, they may have sold, I don't know how many, but let me just put a number out there. Say Sony sold 1 million cameras. Now, you might find that 1% of those people are in these forums talking about issues. You never hear from the people, or very rarely hear from the people that are having issues with cameras. You only ever hear from a small proportion of people that are having the bad issues. And that's why you've got to be very careful what you read on these so-called news groups, because it is such a tiny percentage, and then things get out of hand and it becomes this massive issue that's not even there. I've not had an issue with it at all, so we'll have to wait and see, but I'll be surprised. Let me put it that way. I mean, I'm sure if there was an issue, Sony will do a recall like I've got with my A9 that I still have to send in. There's a problem with the A9 with this flash mount that I think it can come off or something. There's an issue with it anyway. They actually rang me to say that I should send it in to get it fixed for free. So if there is an issue, they will recall it, but I certainly have not heard anything about that. Flyball said, YouTube is truncating the link or something. Oh, okay. Getting an error when I click through, it's odd. Oh, interesting. Well, you can get it if you want to get onto the site. Just go to Facebook. Easiest way is to go to Facebook and just type in photography and videography school. That's the quickest way, and it'll take you to that site because that's the only one on there. So if you want to get in, that's the easiest way to get back if you want to get into that site. So it's photography videography school on Facebook. So that's the easiest way to get in. Rui said, on the lighter side of humour and wait, what do you use when looking out for Bigfoot or Yowie? Is that me? We don't have Bigfoot or Yowie here. Is that because we're going to the snow shoot? I think we just have kangaroos, Rui. That's all we'll have. Dexter said, lunch is over, back to work. Stay cool and keep the videos rolling. Thanks, mate. Flyball said that one worked. Okay, cool. Marty said, what computer and software do you use for your video editing, Dave? Can it handle 4K? Yes, it certainly can. I'm using the Mac Pro. It's the high-spec one. I haven't got this other camera actually on there. I don't know whether I can link. Let me just see if I can add a second camera. Because I'll show you. And let me go here. I've just got to see if I can make it bigger. Because I'll show you the actual camera that I've got. I've just got to see if I can get this to a better quality. There we go. All right, so let me just drag this down. So I'm using the Mac Pro there. So I'm using this. So it's a high spec one. I think it's 12 cores. I think it was 12 core. So I'm using that. And look at it's that quiet, it's ridiculous. It will do easily 4K. And this is a 2013. That's the amazing thing about it. So it's actually the 2013 model. It works brilliantly, and it will do 4K using Final Cut. Yes, no issues at all. So that's the Mac that I'm using to connect to the computer. So that's what I'm using to stream, and it will do 4K. Yes, no issues at all. I can throw everything at it actually, and it never skips a beat. Where was that one? I'm just trying to find out where it was again. Oh, so I've answered that, Marty. Hi, David. I've sold my A7R II since August 2015. Even though I'm frustrated with its slow focusing system at times, it still makes wonderful... Oh, he's had the A7 III, yeah. It still makes wonderful photos. I'm leaving for South Africa at the end of the week. I mean, it still works quite well, John. I wouldn't say that, you know, it's not that bad. Look, compared to the A9 or the A7 III, or even the A7R III, it's definitely not as good in focusing. But if you're dealing with subjects that don't move too fast, it's brilliant, and I still have no issue with using it. If you're dealing with tracking subjects, there's a huge difference. If you're dealing with it focusing in low light, there's a massive difference, because the A7 III, particularly, and the A9 are incredible in low light. That's where you'll really notice a big difference. So that is an issue if you're dealing with it from that aspect. If you're dealing with things that don't move fast so much, the A7 R2 is amazing. Michael said, I just sold my 2470 GM, and after a year, I sold it for $300 less than what I paid for it. And that's exactly what I was talking about, Michael. See, lenses will not lose value much at all. I'm very happy about that. Lens is the best investment. And you know what? I'd be exactly the same. If I had the 2470 GM, I'd be selling that too, and I'd get the Tamron 28 to 75. That's definitely what I would do, because I love the weight and the look of that lens. It's close focusing. I must get that lens down the track. I'm just waiting for it to basically be able to buy in the shop without it being on back order. Cub said, do a Stone Cold Steve Austin impression. What does that mean? Flyball said that link worked. Michael said, Sony fixed my A9 the same day. 2 hours later, me and my A9 went home. Yeah, I've got to send it in. It gets sent to another state here, though, so it's a flight overnight, Michael, but it'll come back in 1 or 2 days. Won't take long. I've just got to get around to doing it. I don't want to let it go. Pro support is great. It is. It's fantastic. John DeWinter said, instead of upgrading to the R3, I purchased the GM 70-200. Great lens. Yet that is a fantastic lens. Viva Valley's just saying hi. Hello. Rui said, my wife and I did a baby shower with our 2 new A7 III's today for almost 5 hours and still had about 30 battery left. I know, they're incredible. The battery's amazing in those cameras. It just lasts forever. Like, once you've started shooting with that, I mean, I must admit, I do sort of hate going back to the A7R2 now because the battery runs out so fast. I do notice the focus being a problem because I'm dealing with tracking subjects all the time and low light focusing. But like I said, I still will keep it for the things that I've mentioned, which is like having that Play Memories hack to let me film for longer. Like I've got the Play Memories hack on the A6500 here, and that will let me go forever with it. You know, if I had the A6500 now, I'd have to turn it off after 30 minutes and let it start again, and you know, I'll go to HDMI or whatever. But it's just so good for that aspect of it. I noticed that even if you buy the new RX 100 Mark V, they've taken the Play Memories apps out of that, so that's another issue that's a bit of a bummer. You know, so it is a bit of an issue. Yeah. So are there any last questions, guys, before we call it a day? I just wanted to have a chat because I missed last Friday with you guys. I will be back for this week's live on Friday. I've got a couple of other studio shoots that I'm going to be posting during the week as well. Like I said, if you can give me a thumbs up, that'd be great because other people will watch this. Any questions, leave down below. Make sure you do watch that other video as well that talks about this, because I'd love to know your opinion on that as well. I'm getting a stack of comments on that. Hopefully trolls won't get in there and try and send that off the planet, but I'll probably just delete if someone does. But yeah. Well, anyway, that's all, folks. So I'll catch you all again for the next video. And have a great evening or day, whatever, however that works out, if you're wherever you are overseas. Last couple of questions I'll answer. John said, I don't find battery life an issue on the R2. I always take 2 batteries and sometimes take a battery bank with me too, because you can fly on the charge. Yes, that's true. Kevin said, I was thinking first to buy the Tamron 2875 and then the 70-200 GM. Do you think that will get me by for a while, or do you suggest something else? No, that would get you by for a while. I still love my 35 though, Kevin, and the 85. But if you wanted to have 2 lenses that could cover basically everything, that would cover you for most things. Michael saying respect. Thank you so much, Michael. John saying thanks. See you later. Goodbye. Bye, David. All right, guys, heading out. I'll catch you all again soon for the next video. Bye for now.